All right, books open to page 106. I don't get a pencil strong enough. Use the force.
You struggling there?
She's trying to close the door with a pencil.
Can I help her out?
On YouTube wondering what's going on.
Can I help her?
Do you want your brother to help you, or do you want to just get out of your chair and shut it?
What?
I don't need my little help.
All right, and she did end up closing the door with a pencil too. All right, had to grab it with a finger. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. I don't even know why YouTube people are watching that. Page 106, numbers 23 and 24. That was all recorded, so they didn't get to watch any of it. So that's a good thing. Watching Maddie struggle over there.
Abby.
Okay, it was Abby. Trying to throw Maddie under the bus. Page 20. Try page 106, number 23. Page 106, number 23. Probably one of the last things you did in your homework were those two word problems, 23 and 24. Not really much of a word problem. Just kind of algebraic representation, then solving the equation. Number 23, how would we write the product of x negative 4 and x positive 2 is 0, Brandon?
1 to the x minus 1 times 1 to the x plus 2 equals 0.
There we go. And what might we do here?
I just wrote x equals those two numbers.
X equals what two numbers?
4 and negative 2.
There we go. If we did happen to multiply, we would get a quadratic trinomial, which we then have to turn around and factor right back into this anyway. So pretty much just set both of them equal to 0 and get your 4 and negative 2. How many have that? Anyone actually multiply them first?
Really overthought.
All right. Well, you know, you got good practice foiling and then backwards foil. How many of you, when you backwards foiled, that you realized that you could have saved a lot of time? Anyone just realized just now when I said it? All right. Anyway, number 24. Saying my dad used to say to my little sister all the time that made her so mad. The cute ones is always a little slow. Anyway, number 24. How would we write? How would we write the sum of 16, 8x, and x squared equals 4? Audrey?
What?
X squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 4.
There we go. And we could solve this by our conventional method of setting it equal to 0, factoring, completely setting each factor to 0, and solving for x. But there's a shortcut. Or did you set it to 0?
I set it to 0.
Okay. And when you did, you got?
X squared positive 8x positive 12 equals 0.
And then I assume you backwards foiled, right, to get?
X plus 6x plus 2.
And you got what two answers for x?
X equals negative 6 and negative 2.
And it's not bad to do it that way. Anyone see a shorter way? Okay, this time Abby takes the shortcut instead of the long cut.
It's a PST, so x plus 4 squared equals 4. And then you take the square root to get x plus 4 equals positive negative 2. And then you can subtract 4 to get x equals negative 6 and negative 2.
There we go. So really, depending on whichever way you see, how many, regardless of the way you did it, got negative 6 and negative 2? Questions on that one? Any questions at all on those? Turn back to page 98. Let's take a look at a couple more word problems. These are a little bit more word problem-y than the last ones. Page 98, number 43. Kendall, go and read that one for us.
A perimeter of a rectangular pod of 1 feet, with the length is 5 feet longer than the width. What are the dimensions of the pod again?
What are the two things it's asking for?
Length and width.
Length and width. When it talks about the dimensions of this rectangle, length and width, and which one got to the x?
The width.
How do we represent the length?
X plus 5.
What's the number we haven't used yet? That's a horrible looking 5. What's the number we haven't used yet?
90.
Which is the
Total perimeter.
perimeter. How do I find perimeter of a rectangle?
The P equals 2N plus 2W.
Right, we know it's 2 lengths and 2 widths, so if I plug in all the numbers where they belong, or all the things where they belong, it's going to change this to say what?
2 times the quantity of x plus 1, and then plus 2 times x. And then you can distribute.
Equals
90.
90, the perimeter, right. And then we distribute, you said you get?
2x plus 10, and then 2x. And then you can combine to get 4x, and then move the 10 as a negative to get 80. And then x equals 20
And that's the
with
width, 20
feet.
feet, okay? And so the length would have been
25 feet.
25 feet. Notice this one was not quadratic, so we don't have two possible answers, just a routine problem here. How many have 20 feet by 25 feet for the dimensions? All right, looking at number 44, read that one for us if you would, Genesis.
The area of a living room is 35 square feet. If the width of the living room is 2 less than the length, what are the dimensions of the living room?
Well, first of all, let's just say 2 feet less than length. That's a really tiny living room. Usually living rooms, between, 150, 200 square feet large. This is tiny. Anyway, maybe this is in, somebody's shack in, some third world country, bless them, and they're happy to have that. We're spoiled here in America. We think if it's not big and beautiful, it's bad, but, hey, they're thankful. All right, so number 44, two unknowns are, again, length and width. Which one got to the x? Length this time. Width would be
X minus 2.
x negative 2. It's 2 less than the length. The number they haven't used yet is the,
35
which is the,
total square feet.
the area is the word it uses, right? The area. And how about the area of a rectangle? Right, the length times the width. In geometry we call them base and height, and R equals BH, but A equals LW works here. So in for the area, they tell me it's,
35
in for the length, of course, we'll put, and in for the width. And to solve, we, to get,
35 equals 2x. X squared negative 2x.
and all of a sudden we have what kind of quadratic? We have x squared and we have x to the first. Complete. So we need to set it equal to 0. Or we could complete the square, I guess, if we wanted to. Which one do you want to do?
Complete the square.
All right. In fact, we've already got the gap here, right? So what would we have to put in the blank here, Genesis? What two things do we do to complete the square, class? Half and square. Of course, we have to have a 1. We do. We really would like an even. We have that. So if we half the 2 and square it, 1. And that means we also have to add 1 to the other side as well. So 1 plus 35?
36.
36. And then we're going to turn the x squared negative 2x positive 1 into a binomial squared.
X minus 1.
There we go. Then we've got this binomial squared.
Take the square root.
Take the square root to get,
6.
well, it's not going to be positive. Negative 6 equals,
X minus 1.
and then we just
Take away plus 1.
add the 1. And 1 plus 6?
7.
Or 1 minus 6.
Negative.
But again, x is the length of the room. The length can't possibly be negative 5, so we'll ignore that number. The length is 7 feet, and the width must be 5 feet. So to give you a little perspective, it's right about here's about 5 feet from there. So maybe again, YouTube can't see this, but about that big of a living room. Again, that's not much of a living room, but it's not even much of a closet for some people. It's bigger than my closet, but for some people, it's not even much of a closet. How many did have 7 feet by 5 feet for the dimensions? The other option, of course, class, would have been to send the 35 over as a negative 35. This does factor rather easily. X negative 7, x positive 5. Set them both to 0. There's your 7 or negative 5. Same answers, we discount the negative 5. Just up to you which one you see first. Questions on all 4 of the word problems. Any questions at all on those before we look at the rest of the homework on page 105? Anyone 4 for 4 on those word problems? You got them all. 3 out of 4, just missed one of them. All right, any questions at all? Page 105. And this was a good comprehensive review of our quadratics. Numbers 1 through 4, you were solving by the factoring method. So again, throw it up there on the YouTube screen as well. Set it to 0, factor, set the factors to 0, solve. And again, this is great if it looks easy to factor. If you can figure it out quickly, this to me is my go-to. I'd rather do this than that if it's easy to see the factoring. Number 1, how did you, it's already set equal to 0, all 4 of these already set equal to 0. How did you factor the 3x squared, negative 28x, negative 20? Michael?
I did 3x plus 2 and then x negative 10.
All right, and yep, outer inner is going to check, so I got what two answers for x?
Negative 2/3 and 10.
There we go. By the way, I would not want to try to complete the square because I don't have a 1, right? That's a 3x squared. Yeah, that would be a nightmare to complete the square, so I definitely like the factoring there. Number 2, there is a little something we could do to speed up our work, Maddie. If I knock the 2 out, what does it become? And again, I'm not looking to complete the square because I don't have a 1 in front of my squared variable. We would say I don't have a leading coefficient of 1. It's a 15. So completing the squares out anyway, I might as well factor, besides the fact that it said in the directions factor. How do we factor it, Maddie? And yep, outer inner checks, 2 answers for Q. And how many of those 2 answers for number 2? Did anyone have, anyone not take the 2 out? Did you still get the same answers? And you would still get the same answers. You just end up with a 2/6, which reduces, or a negative 2/10, which reduces, one of those two, if you didn't pull the 2 out. Any questions, comments on 2? All right, let's take a look at number 3. No shortcuts here. How did you factor number 3, Brandon?
3y plus 11 and y plus 1.
And yes, that does check out. On your outer inner, 2 answers for y.
Negative 11/3 and negative 1.
How many of those 2 answers for number 3? Okay, question on number 3. All right, number 4. We can do some big time reducing on number 4. What can we divide out, anybody? 40. How many divided a 40 out of everything? That's going to really help you out. You could at least knock a 10 out of everything, right? And then hopefully you saw the 4 as well. So maybe in 2 steps you got the 40, but I see the 40 pretty quickly there. Abby, what did you get?
2m negative 1 and negative 1.
2m squared, negative 3m, positive 1 equals 0?
Oh.
When you pull the 40 out of
Yes,
everything?
that's what I had.
That's what you said? Yeah. All right, and then you factored it. And what did you get when you factored it?
This is 2m negative 1 and m negative 1.
And yep, outer inner checks. And so your 2 answers for m.
1/2 and 1.
And how many got those answers on number 4? Make sure that showed up on the screen. Just barely fitted it on the screen. All right, questions? All right, any questions at all on the factoring method? Any questions on this method? Anyone say, can we practice one more of those before I have an opportunity to demonstrate my great knowledge? Anyone want any more practice with this? Factoring method, going once on factoring method, going twice on factoring. All right, let's go to numbers 5 through 8. And in numbers 5 through 8, all 4 of these were what kind of quadratics? Genesis? I'm sorry?
Complete.
No. Remember, complete is it's not missing something. It's got its x to the first. It's like I've got my wife. I am now complete. All y'all incomplete. One day you'll be complete. But I am complete. Okay, I have wife. Okay, these are all lonely m squares and k squares, p squares, and r squares. There are no k to the first, m to the first, p to the first, r to the first. They're all lonely. They are incomplete. And incomplete quadratics class, we say with a little more confidence, Kendall. At least she was saying anything at all. Class, now that Kendall helped us out, how do we solve incomplete quadratics? Isolate the x squared, or the k squared, or p squared, or whatever. So on number 5, to isolate the k squared, it's going to take 2 steps. First of all, Kendall,
You add 27.
to get 27, then you,
Take the square root.
not yet,
Oh wait, you divide away the 3.
divide away the 3 to get 9. Then we've got the, that was helpful. Then we take the square root to get k equals
3.
positive negative 3 minus a point. Careful there. Yeah, Mr. McDonald was like, can you lead singing in chapel today? I'm like, you don't want me to lead singing in chapel right now. Believe me. Anyway, number 6. What do we need to do here, Genesis? Sound like Bill Clinton now. Add 16 to get 16. And then to get, and that gets the p squared by itself. Then we get p equals minus a point. Positive negative 2. How many positive negative 2? Oh, number 7. We can't isolate the m squared when there's a couple of them. So Audrey,
You can move the 3m squared over.
as a,
Negative
to get,
9m squared.
and at the same time, let's also move the
11
over as a,
positive.
so we should get to 9m squared equals 11. Then,
Divide by 9.
and that doesn't divide evenly, just 11/9, which just really obnoxious, especially since we now have to.
Take the square root.
And of course here cancels, just gets m. Thoughts?
Square root of 11 over 3.
Good. Fortunately, it's already a number I can take the root of evenly, and there's my answer. How many have this answer for number 7? How many had a slightly different answer? Brandon?
Positive, negative.
Positive, negative. Good job, Brandon. How many did have the positive, negative? It's just, okay. I was just seeing if you were paying attention. All right, number 8. Let's see. I don't even know whose turn it is. Michael, you're wearing a really bright orange shirt. Go Tigers. Not Auburn Tigers, for the record, right? No. He is part of his community services, helping out on a kickball team, assistant coaching. Hey, you work with little kids. You feel like it's community service, right? I mean, you two help them with. Chloe's in your class, community service right there. Except you're getting a grade for it. He's not. Anyway, so Michael, number 8. What we got to do?
You gotta add, let me find 8, you gotta move the 10 over. The 10r squared.
Good, as a,
Positive
to get,
10 squared, 3r squared.
there we go. Move the 10r squared over, get a 3r squared equals 21. Then,
You divide by 3.
to get,
7.
and then,
You take the square root.
To get-
Positive, oh wait, no, you just get square root of 7.
minus a point.
You got positive, negative.
It is positive, negative, square root of 7. So, what, like, square root of 7 is going to be what, like 2.6-ish?
6.5.
Yeah. Oh, it actually has it in here. How about that? 2.65 or negative 2.65. But yes, even when you can't take the square root or do anything else with it, kind of like here, I couldn't take the square root of the 11, but I still leave the positive, negative, because 2 answers for the R. Well, this was the M, that was the R. Anyone perfect on 5 through 8? You got all of them. Any questions on incomplete quadratics? Or are we going to be ready in a few moments to demonstrate our mastery of this topic? Last call for questions on incomplete quadratics. Let's take a look at numbers 9 through 11, solving by completing the square. Now again, I'll admit, if it's me on a quiz or test, and I see number 9, and the instructions don't explicitly state that I have to complete the square, I ain't complete the square. I'm doing g minus 9g plus 1, right? I'm getting my 2 answers, I'm doing the whole thing in my head. But it said to complete the square. So when we complete the square, get the other poster on the screen now. When we complete the square, we got to get the proper form. We've got to have a 1 right here. You mustest. We really would like the b to be even. I don't even care if it's positive. I just want it to be even. And we got to kick out the constant. So what do I got to do first on this particular problem, Maddie? And we're going to leave it spot empty for now. What goes in the gap, Maddie?
16.
Good, because we do what 2 things? All right, class, what do? Half and square. You take half of b, then you square. That's half and square, but it was faster to do that than to write out half and square because I'm lazy. So we half and square. Maddie said we get a 16, but what we put on one side, put on the other side. So over here, my 9 plus 16 becomes, and over here I turn my now PST, because I made it that way, into a, binomial square, g negative 4. And then we, and when we do, we get, positive negative 5. And then we get what 2 answers for g? Ooh, you minus the 4 instead of adding the 4. What's 5 plus 4? And negative 5 plus 4? Negative 1. This is just a little bit backwards there. How many have 9 and negative 1? Questions. Number 10. This one does not factor. This one does not factor. So if your thought was, I'll just always use the factoring method, good luck. No, in Algebra 1, we pretty much, everything could use the factoring method because that was our go-to, but we're in Algebra 2 now. Life is more complicated. And What do I do here? Abby?
You move the 1 over to the other side as a negative one.
All right. Then what?
And then you write w squared negative 4w positive 4 equals 4, or positive 4. But
All right, we're going to put a positive 4 in the blank, basically. We move the 1 over as a negative. It leaves a gap. We fill the gap half and square with a positive 4. Also put on that side. So the other side really becomes a
positive 3.
positive 3. And then over here, we're going to go binomial squared.
W negative 2. And then you get the square root. So w negative 2 equals positive negative the square root of 3. Then move the 2 over as positive 2 to get
That. Now, if it happened to ask for decimals, which I think it did, didn't it? No, it didn't. That was only on the last one. You could get decimals. That'd be what, 3.73 and negative 0.26 or something like that if you happen to get decimals. It didn't say to get decimals. Let's leave it like that. How many got that? Questions on number 10. Number 11. We've got that's right, coming over this way. We have a 4h squared positive 16h negative 72 all equal to 0. I can't complete the square when it's written like this. You cannot. Because class, the leading coefficient must be a
Single digit.
1. And it ain't. It's a 4. So what do I have to do to this problem, Kendall? It has to be a 1 right here, and it isn't a 1. So what do I do?
Divide
By?
4.
If I say, don't make this too hard now, the only way to turn a 4 into a 1 is to divide it by 4. I mean, subtracting 3, but that wouldn't work, okay? We're going to only subtract 3h squared from both sides to just make things complicated. But we're going to go through and divide everything by 4. What if it were a 3 right here, class? Divide everything. What if it were a negative 5 right there? Divide by negative 5. Divide by whatever is in front of the h squared or x squared or whatever squared to make it become, Kendall,
H squared.
plain old h squared, or 1h squared if you really wanted to write it, but I don't.
Positive 4h. And then negative 18.
All equal to
0.
0. How many did that first step? You have to. By the way, even if you couldn't divide a 4 out evenly, and this is going to come up in pre-calculus where you have to get 1s at times, even if it doesn't work evenly, even if it creates a nasty looking fraction, you have to have a 1. And we got our 1. Fortunately, no nasty fractions, and it's still even, which is really happy, Kendall. So what do we do now?
You add 18. And then you get positive 1 blank.
And on the other side, don't forget the other side.
And then you get h positive 2
Quantity squared equals,
22. And then you take the square root
okay?
to get h plus 2 equals positive negative square root of 22.
Yeah, I wish I could do some with that 22, but I can't. Finish it out.
You subtract 2.
It's not a pretty answer, but I knew it wouldn't be pretty because going back to the h squared positive 4h negative 18, you can split up an 18 and get a 4. Like 6 and 3 going to give you a 4, 9 and 2 going to give you a 4, 18 and 1 going to give you a 4. Like you already knew it was going to be ugly. If it will not factor, it will not look good. Okay? But that's why we have this method, is for the ones that don't factor, that aren't going to look good. We can still get the answers, though they are irrational. How many got this answer for number 11? Questions on 11. Take a look at number 12. What do I have to do on number 12, class? Divide it 2. I must. If I'm going to solve by completing the square, I have to divide everything by 2, even if it doesn't work evenly. But again, fortunately, it does. What do I get, Genesis?
B squared. Positive 5 negative 4 equals 0.
Now, remember I said it's really, really nice if this number is even. Let's take a look at what happens when it ain't. All right? We're going to follow the steps we normally would, Genesis. We've got it reduced to size at least, but we're still not in that form because I haven't yet moved the
-4.
Right, so what should I rewrite now?
B squared positive 5B equals 0
You're moving the -4 over.
equals positive 4.
Equals 4. Now here's the question. I've got to do what two things to fill in the gap, class? Half and square. What are they? Again?
Half and square.
Half and square. All right, so here's the question. I got to take half of 5. Let this be really easy. 5 halves, not 2.5. That's mixed numbers. We hate mixed numbers. 2.5, that's decimals. I hate decimals. 5 halves. What's half of 5, class? 5 halves. What's half of 11? 11 halves. What's half of 19? What's half of -3? What's half of 10? 5. Good job. All right, but if it's an odd number, right, you take half of 5, it's 5 halves. And then when we square 5 halves, remember you square top and bottom. Squaring the 5 halves gives us, class, positive 25 fourths. Leave the improper fraction. And what you add to one side, you gotta add to the other side as well. Now, what this means, if this is an even number, you get an even, or you get a whole integer here and here. If it's an odd number, you want it with a fraction, but it's going to be over 4. So fourths aren't too bad, right? But this 4 is over 1, and you have to be able to combine these. Well, in order to add fractions, you got to have a common denominator. So that means we're going to have to multiply top and bottom by a 4 here. So instead of 4 onths, 4 firsts, it becomes 16 fourths that we add to the 25 fourths. So what's left on the right-hand side? 41 fourths. Over here, we make a binomial squared, which isn't too bad. Take the square root, the sign, and the square root. 5 halves, right? The thing we took half of. Now we got to take the square root of both sides. You're doing this with me. And of course, the square root of something squared is cancel the square and the square root to just get
Equals 5x equals the square root of positive negative the square root of 41 over 2.
Here's the nice thing. With the denominator 4, at least the denominator is already something you can take the root of, right? So while it comes out kind of ugly, positive negative square root of 41, at least it's all over a nice easy 2. And by the way, notice this is also over 2. So when I move the 5 halves over, class, as a negative 5 halves, normally I won't write it as a separate term. Normally, I'll take my positive negative square root of 41 over 2. I'll extend it out, and I'll put the negative 5 over the 2 that way. Does that make sense? Rather than writing it as a separate term. And there's my answer. Okay. Questions on this? Let's just see. So I want you to do this problem. 3x squared, negative 12x, positive 8 equals 5. You're going to need to solve by completing the square.
Technically, on number 11, because 4 is a square, would you still be able to factor into 2h plus 4 squared? Because 4 is a square.
Ask me later. You're saying you moved the 72 over.
Mm-hmm.
What did you fill in the square with?
Oh, I didn't do it, but I'm saying in theory. Because
Well, because the whole, okay, here's the premise of half and square. Technically, you would take half of b and also divide b by the coefficient. That's way too complicated, right? My whole premise is make math easy. If you get a 1, you don't have to worry. So technically, you have to take the 16 divided by the 2, but also divided by the 4, and all that's then square. It's a big mess. So rather than messing with any of that, make a 1 in the first spot. You don't have to, then it's an easy half and square, which is simple as opposed to complicated. Because yeah, I don't want to do that. B over 2a squared. That's nasty. Yes, sir.
Is the answer no solution?
Oh no, of course not. Nobody got this answer correct. I will say my default, when I see squared and first, I always lean toward proper quadratic form first, because what if I can factor it? I see 3's and everything, knock it out. Once I get to here, I'm like, there's no way a 1 can give you a 4. I can't solve it by factoring. I've got to complete the square, and hence finished it out. Questions on that problem? All right, tackle this one now. Again, I'd always prefer factoring if I can see it. And if it doesn't factor, complete the square. How many got to this point? What goes in the blank, class? 9/4. Half of 3 is 3/2. Square it, 9/4. How will I have to rewrite my 12 over 1 then? 48 over 4. Questions on this one? If you're finished, page 95, 21, 22, 24, and 25. If you're finished, 21, 22, 24, 25, if you need another minute to finish up these two problems, do so. If you have questions on these two problems, get that taken care of before you work on 21, 22, 24, 25. If you finish early somehow, go ahead and take a moment to figure the decimal values, but that's not priority for me. That's right, okay. Every now and you get those problems that shake your confidence, like, I do that right? That seems weird. It's weird, but oh, equals 10. Huh, oops. If you didn't get the same answer I did on 21, that's good. I was like, they got whole numbers? How'd they do? No, now you copy it right. Down. For sake of time, pencils down. Even if you're not finished with all of them, check the ones you did get done. Number 21 worked out great. You could have solved it by factoring if the directions hadn't said otherwise. You end up getting 7 and -1. Did we get that on the first one? Number 21. Number 22, again, could have factored as it turns out because it comes out to even integers, but ended up getting 3 and -11. How many of that for number 22? All right, on number 24, it's just big and nasty. I will say the reducing here is just awful. I was like, well, no 4 goes in, like 4 and 104. Well, there's a 4 in that as well, 4 and 26. So it's really 16 times 26, so 4 times the square root of 26. That's just annoying, and then minus 20 at the end. How many got that for 24, those who made it that far? All right, questions on that one? Yeah, I hope that they're not that bad. And because of the big 40 right here, the big B value messed it all up. Here, not getting 8 out of everything becomes really nice and small. And with positive negative square root of 2 minus 1. Answer questions, comments?
I forgot to add on the other side.
So you had 2 and 0 as your answers?
Yeah.
All right. Questions on this? Clear, yes, except for clean sheet of paper, pencil, calculator, everything else away. Clean sheet of paper, pencil, calculator, everything else away. First and last name at the top of your paper along with today's date, which is something. 10/29/21. 10/29/21, today's date. And this is quiz 13. Your lucky day, Friday, taking quiz 13. All right. And I guess it wouldn't be fair to the YouTube audience if you had posters and they didn't. So rather than zoom out and let them see the posters, I'll just take them down.
I mean, they get as much time as they want, though.
Say what?
They get as much time as they
It's
want.
true, they do get as much time as they want.
So,
But Brecken would say it's unfair because you actually get a real teacher and he has to suffer with a screen. All right. You got first and last name. You got 10/29/21 today's date. You got quiz 13 in the assignment spot. Let's take a look at quiz 13 together. Numbers 1 and 2. These are going to be incomplete quadratics. Solve them. Numbers 3 through 6. These are going to be ones you solve by factoring. Sure to show you work. Third set, 7 and 8. These you're going to solve by completing the square. And then number 9, write an equation and solve the word problem. You may begin. I'm going to write the homework on the chalkboard, and then maybe pause the video while you work on your quiz if you're watching on YouTube.